What is going on, guys? It is Michael or That Guy Expo from Exponential DFS bringing you guys a new video on the channel today. And as you can see from the title slide to my right on your screen, I am going to be doing kind of a breakdown, MLB prediction show kind of for the rest of the season. So this is only going to be talking about Major League Baseball today. Corey kind of covered some good topics with NFL in the last episode, and today I'm going to be talking mainly about Major League Baseball and kind of some of my predictions going forward for the rest of the season. So first, kind of starting out, we're going to start out in the American League. That's where kind of I think most of the interesting storylines are going to be. Most of them are going to be in the American League. If you aren't aware of kind of the current standings, the Orioles and the Blue Jays are tied for first in the American League East. The Indians are up in the American League Central, and in the American League West, it's the Rangers ahead by quite a few games. So the reason why it's kind of more interesting in the American League is I would say the division races are a lot closer than they are in the National League. There's only really 1 to 2 National League races that I think kind of the second place team has a chance of catching up. So first of all, obviously with the Orioles and the Blue Jays tied for first in the East, one of those two teams, whoever falls behind, is going to be the first place team in the wild card. They kind of have a 1.5 game advantage over the Red Sox, who are in third in that division. The Indians, of course, and then the Rangers are up by quite a few games. So kind of looking at the division standings for the games up, Indians are up 3.5 over Detroit. Seattle is back 7 games with Texas. So that's kind of how that's breaking down in the American League. So obviously, I know you guys can read. You can go look up the standings. So the point of this show is to kind of give you some of my thoughts on the teams that are in the race and kind of what teams I think, even though they might be within a couple games or so, that I really don't think they have any chance at all of catching up. So obviously, first starting the American League is the American League East with the Orioles and the Blue Jays tied there. It's kind of tough for me to peg down either of these teams. I will come out and say I do think the Red Sox are going to win this division. I'm a little biased because I am a Red Sox fan, but I think when you look at the fact that they have you could argue the top offense in baseball for the entire season, even though they've been slumping the last 2 weeks. They're towards the bottom of the league in average the last 2 weeks, but that was partly due to the West Coast road trip they had, that they had a 9-game road trip that they really did struggle with the bats. But I think you could easily make the case that the Red Sox can win this division. Obviously, the first I just made with them having arguably the top offense in all of Major League Baseball. Number 2, that their pitching has been the real issue the entire season. And when you look at the last 2 weeks, a week, they're towards the top of the entire league in starter rotation average, really. So I think the fact that you look at Price is starting to really turn it around. There have been points during the season that he's looked like his old self, but the last couple of starts, he had a really good shutdown start. He had one start that he had scoreless through 7 and gave up a couple earned in the 8th inning against the Mariners that they blew that game. But I think you could easily argue Price is starting to get back on track now. Porcello has looked absolutely shut down at home. I believe his record now is 11-0 at Fenway. He just notched another win last night. He's been, you could definitely say, their best pitcher this season, especially at home, him being 11-0. Pomeranz has not looked all that great in his first couple Red Sox starts, but that ERA is very inflated just from his first start with the Red Sox, where he didn't even go, I think, 4 innings. I think he only lasted 3 1/3 and gave up somewhere around 6 to 8 earned runs, if I remember correctly. So that ERA is definitely inflated just from that first start. He hasn't pitched as well as, obviously, as he was in San Diego, but I think he's going to start to turn it around. And I think that starts tonight against the Yankees. I really think he has a pretty solid start tonight. I think Stephen Wright, he started to regress slightly. But again, his last time out, he threw a complete game and looked fantastic against the Angels. So, he's just been so good. I believe it was against the Angels that he had his last dominant start, if I remember correctly. He's just been so good this entire year. He was easily their best starter up until the All-Star break, where he made the All-Star team. And then I would say for the whole season, you would definitely say it's Porcello up to this point now. And I think for the rest of the year, you definitely could say he could be the top starter. And then I think them having a number 5 starter right now, Eduardo Rodriguez, again, another guy. He was injured coming into this year, had a great end of last year, injured coming into this year, struggled quite a few for his first starts, first like 4 or 5 starts. His last couple starts have been like his old self from last year. He's been absolutely dominant. So yeah, it was actually against, the Dodgers at LA that he had the complete game. The game against the Angels, he pitched okay, but it was, against the Dodgers that he had that shutdown complete game start in LA. So that's kind of my thoughts. I really do think the Red Sox win this division, and I think all around offense as well, but rotation-wise, their rotation is way steps above the Orioles and the Blue Jays. And Detroit. I mean, they easily have, I think, the best rotation when their pitching is doing well, which is saying a lot. But when their pitching is on, which it has been the last 2 weeks, if they continue to keep this up, it's hard to see them not winning this division. They have the starters that could easily win this division for them. Going into Orioles and Blue Jays, I mean, my prediction, I think the Red Sox win the East, and then you could definitely see 3 AL East teams make it. I'm not sold on Detroit. They're only a game back in the wild card right now, but I'm not sold on Detroit. And the reason why I'm not sold on Detroit is their rotation. Justin Verlander's been very, very good this year. Michael Fulmer's been very, very good this year. But beyond those 2 guys, who do you really have? You have Boyd and Anibal Sanchez. I think in the playoffs especially, you need at least 3 solid starters with a clear number 1. I think the Tigers have that clear number 1 in Verlander. I think they have extremely solid number 2 in Fulmer. But I think beyond those 2, I don't see a lot for them. Their offense is very strong. I think getting J.D. Martinez back from injury has helped them tremendously. Miggy Cabrera, we all know how good he is. Ian Kinsler is extremely good. Victor Martinez has been very, very good this year. But I think Justin Upton hasn't played well, obviously. Cameron Maybin, he's pretty good, but I'm not sold. Casey McGee is their starting third baseman right now with Castellanos hurt. I mean, Castellanos has been extremely good. If he can come back and be very strong, I think I give them a much better chance because losing him to the DL is really hurt. Jose Iglesias is a strong defensive player, but offensively he isn't all that great. I mean, James McCann, good against lefties. Saltalamacchia, I mean, he's okay. I think all around this team is pretty solid offensively, especially when they get Castellanos back. But I just don't see it in the rotation. I just don't think Justin Verlander, Michael Fulmer, and guys beyond them, their last 2 to 3 starters, I don't see it. I just don't see it for them. I think would I be shocked? No, because I think it would be their offense carrying them to the wild card. And if they somehow get into the wild card, and I mean, you never know with a 1-game wild card, you have Verlander going with that offense, you never know. But I think to get there, you need 4 starters in the regular season, at least, that are pretty solid at this point in the year, and I just don't see it for them. Kind of going with the Orioles-Blue Jays discussion, I'm not sold on the Orioles. I think the Blue Jays, I think they have a better rotation than the Orioles have. And I think you could definitely argue they have a much better lineup than the Orioles have, and this is why. Michael Saunders, absolutely a great player. Melvin Upton, I actually do like that trade that they made at the deadline. I mean, Kevin Pillar is a pretty nice player, but I mean, he's hurt, I believe. So it was a nice trade for them, in my opinion, to go out and get Melvin Upton. Really do like that trade. I mean, is he going to be a guy that's going to light it up at the plate? No, but he has a little bit of speed in the outfield. He can get on base a little bit. His average is not all that impressive, but I think for what that was out there for replacements for them, I do really like the deal they made. Jose Bautista looks like he's starting to really pick it up. Josh Donaldson's amazing. Tulo's playing well. Devin Travis. Ever since they started hitting Travis lead off consistently for their lineup, it has made such a huge difference for them. It's amazing what difference he's made hitting Devin Travis lead off and Bautista second instead of batting Bautista lead off. Justin Smoke is fine for that lineup. Edwin is very solid at DH. Also, Martin is great. I think their lineup is very scary. I think their rotation is the only question mark because to me, they don't have a clear number one shutdown guy in that one wild card game that could guarantee a win for them. I just don't see it. Estrada's pitched pretty well. I mean, they're planning on having Aaron Sanchez pitch out of the bullpen. You could argue he was one of their more dominant pitchers this year. J.A. Happ, I think, by and large, is their best pitcher in their rotation, in my opinion. I don't know if that would be the guy they'd start in a one-game wildcard game. I mean, Estrada is their number one, but I really do think J.A. Happ has been their most dominant pitcher of late. R.A. Dickey, that's the real question mark in the rotation. Stroman's been okay. I do like the Liriano trade. I think Liriano's not going to light the world on fire, right? He's not going to light it up, but I think he's a veteran lefty that could be pretty solid for them down the stretch. So I think overall, again, I think they're lacking that clear number one guy, and that's the Tigers have that. I think the Orioles have more of that than them with Tillman. I think Tillman's been really good this year for the Orioles. So I think he's more of a clear number one than any of the guys the Blue Jays have, but I do think the Blue Jays by and large are a better club than the Orioles. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Orioles miss the playoffs completely and don't even get the wild card. I know they've kind of been at the top of that division all year with the Red Sox, and the Blue Jays made that push. But, I mean, when you look at this lineup, I mean, Kim in left, Adam Jones, Trumbo, Machado, Hardy, Scope, Chris Davis, Alvarez, Wieters. I mean, it's a very solid lineup. I mean, you can't argue it's a solid lineup. Trumbo is a complete power hitter. Kim hasn't done really anything. Machado, of course, it's Machado. I think the question marks are kind of J.J. Hardy. Scope has been really good. Wieters is always a question mark to me. Alvarez, you never know, truly. They have a decent rotation. I think they have a better number one than the Blue Jays, but I think overall the Blue Jays have a better rotation. Gallardo hasn't been good. Gossman's been pretty good. And Wade Miley, I mean, he has not a good ERA at all and hasn't pitched all that great when he was pitching for Seattle. So, I mean, it was a good trade for them, I think, trying to shore up another guy in their rotation. But again, I don't see it for them. Their rotation just isn't all that strong. Moving on to the team that's made a really big surge in the wild card. They've won 5 straight games. They've won the first 2 in their series against the Tigers, and that's the Seattle Mariners. I don't know what to think about this club because I thought this was going to be a club that was really going to sell at the deadline. I didn't think they had any chance of getting back into it looking at their lineup, looking at their rotation. But my goodness, this team has something about them. They're just so scrappy. I mean, if you saw any of the highlights last night from the game that went 14 innings, it's just unbelievable. I mean, they tie it with a 3-run home run in the bottom of the 8th. Then the game goes all the way to the 14th. They're down a run after the home run by Victor Martinez, and they still put up a run and then get second and third with 1 out and get a sac fly to win the game. I mean, this team is so scrappy. I mean, I don't think they have a playoff lineup. I really don't. But this team, there's just something that they're so scrappy. I mean, Heredia has looked really good for them leading off. Leonis Martin, Nelson Cruz, Kyle Seager, Kendall Marte, Cano, Lee, Zunino, Lynn. I mean, when I name off those names, that doesn't sound like a playoff lineup to me. It really doesn't. And their rotation, I mean, Felix, if he starts really turning it around, you know what Felix Hernandez can do. Iwakuma has been pretty solid this year, ERA around 3.5. James Paxton arguably has been one of their top pitchers this year. But again, outside those 3 guys, LeBlanc isn't anything to get excited about. But again, a team with a clear number 1 in a wild card game that you can throw King Felix and feel confident. Again, I don't think that's something that the Blue Jays really have. And that's kind of their downside here. But the question is, who's going to get to that game? Because if you don't get to that game, it doesn't matter, right? And I don't know if I really see Seattle getting to that wild card game. I would give the Tigers a better chance than I would the Mariners. I think the Mariners have a better... the Tigers, I think when you take all 3 into consideration, I think the Mariners have a better 1, 2, 3 in their rotation, just given the fact that their 3 is much stronger than the Tigers. But I think lineup, by and large, the Tigers have a much better lineup than this Mariners team has. No power, really, in this lineup outside Nelson Cruz and Cano and Lind. And I mean, they have some power with Cruz and Cano. Lind has some power. Seager has some as well. But I think by and large, that Tigers lineup is much scarier. Plus, I think the ballpark for Seattle is going to play a part in that, with the runs scored being lower, obviously, for them than the Tigers. Yeah, Mariners can hit some home runs with those main four guys. But I think the Tigers, that lineup, I mean, Upton can hit one out, JD Martinez can hit one out, Ian Kinsler, Miggy, Victor Martinez, even their catcher, James McCann. I mean, yeah, Zunino has some power for Seattle, but he's much more inconsistent, I would say. He's just a power hitter, doesn't hit for any average at all, so it's a little scary for them there. But yeah, I mean, jumping and saying they don't have much power obviously isn't right, but I think overall, I think the Tigers lineup as a whole is much, much better than the Mariners. So I think, for giving you guys a hard prediction for me, I think the Red Sox win the East. I do honestly think the Blue Jays take first place in the wild card. And then I think that second wild card spot is where it's a little iffy for me. I think the Orioles have a pretty solid lineup for a second wild card spot. They have some starters that can get it done, like Tillman. I think Wade Miley won't pitch nearly as bad down the stretch as he has this year. But I do think it will be Detroit and Toronto. I really think Baltimore falls off here. Again, I think the cases I've already made. I think outside Tillman, I mean, this rotation isn't all that impressive. And I think the Blue Jays have a better all-around rotation. I don't think they have that clear number one like the Orioles could have with Tillman in a wild card game. But I think, I mean, Estrada, Happ, Stroman, Liriano, they could even pitch Aaron Sanchez a little bit down the stretch if they wanted to, not just out of the bullpen. I think I prefer the Blue Jays. So I think I'm going to go Red Sox win the East. I think I'm going to go with the Blue Jays and the Tigers as the wild card teams. And so obviously that shows, I think the Indians are going to hang on in the Central, and I think the West, the Rangers have already locked that up. I don't think the Astros get back in this race. Again, a team I don't think they have any pitching. The Yankees will definitely not get back in this race, and obviously everyone else is 7.5 or more back. So I think those are kind of the teams that are going to be battling down the stretch: Baltimore, Toronto, Boston, Detroit, Seattle. Houston, maybe. Just, you never know with them because of their lineup, but they don't have a rotation that all around scares me to get back in this race. They were right there, and then they've fallen back, and I just don't see it for them. I think they could maybe pass Seattle, because I think Seattle will fall off a little bit with that lineup. So I could maybe see them getting back up in front of Seattle, but I don't think they get into that second wild card spot. I think it is going to be kind of Toronto, Detroit, and I think Baltimore barely misses that. National League. So there's not nearly as much to talk about in the National League. I mean, to me, I think the National League is almost pretty clear at this point. I mean, Washington's up by 6.5 over Miami in their division. I think Washington easily wins that division. Mm-hmm. Chicago is way ahead in their division by 12 games over the Cardinals. And the only division that's pretty interesting is the Dodgers and the Giants. They're both tied. Now, obviously, I think the divisions are pretty clear beyond that Giants and Dodgers West. But I think when you look at the wild card, very difficult to pin down right now. Obviously, the Dodgers, Giants, one of those two teams is number one in the wild card by a lot, right? They're up by 4 games in the wild card. So the question is, who do I think wins that division? I think it is the Giants. I think when you look at this Giants team, I think their lineup is really good. I think the adding of Eduardo Nunez, I really did like that trade for them, and then they ended up trading to get Matt Moore. So that makes their rotation extremely strong, in my opinion. I mean, when you tell me you have Madison Bumgarner, Johnny Cueto, Jeff Samardzija, and Matt Moore, that is an extremely strong 4 heading into a playoff series that you would be very scared in facing. I mean, Samardzija hasn't pitched all that great this year, but, I mean, even those first 2, Bumgarner, Cueto, just absolutely top 2. I mean, of course, the Dodgers, it hurts them not having Kershaw. And apparently he was throwing a little bit today or yesterday. But I don't know if he comes back in time to help them win this division. But I definitely would not be shocked if they get in through the wild card. And again, a team that if they have Kershaw in the wild card game, I mean, that's just amazing. And they could definitely make the divisional series for sure. But I think the Giants win this division. I do think I mean, looking at this, I think the Dodgers can hang on and get into the wild card, especially if Kershaw can come back before the end of the regular season, before the playoffs. I think he'll help them at the end of the year and obviously help them in the playoffs. I think the second wild card spot is what's very interesting because there's quite a few teams within striking distance. Anyone after Colorado, I give absolutely no chance. Philly, Milwaukee, San Diego, Arizona, obviously no. I think Colorado, you can never count them out with how many games they play at Coors. I just don't see it in their lineup. I don't see it in their rotation. Cargo getting hurt doesn't help them. I don't think they have a legitimate chance. I think the legitimate contenders for the wild card start with the Mets, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and Miami. And obviously, I think the Dodgers take the other wild card spot. I already mentioned that. So, Mets. Issues. Harvey. Hurt. Lineup. I don't like it. I mean, obviously, adding Jay Bruce really helped them. But Cespedes getting hurt and having to play Conforto in left right now doesn't help. But I think the infield just isn't strong enough. Wilmer Flores, Reynolds, Neil Walker, James Loney, D'Arnaud. I just don't see it. I think their outfield is very strong offensively. It's very weak defensively, which can hurt them down the stretch and would be in the playoffs. But I just don't see it with their infield. I don't see the lineup that could really get it done down the stretch. I just don't give them a chance, especially with Harvey being hurt. Pittsburgh, the rotation. I mean, the rotation hurts them. Garrett Cole's a very strong pitcher. Talion has pitched great. But beyond that, I mean, Ivan Nova, sure, maybe. Vogelsong, no. I mean, outside those first two guys and Talion's so young, I don't know if they're really going to stretch him down, really push him down the stretch. I mean, outside of Cole and Talion, I don't have any faith in that rotation. Cardinals, I do like the Cardinals. I think they're the other team that gets in. I think it's going to be Dodgers-Cardinals. I mean, Matt Holliday, Pham, Piscotty, Jerko, Peralta, Carpenter, Brandon Moss. I mean, all these guys, for the most part, are veterans that know how to win. And I think Adam Wainwright's going to pitch pretty well down the stretch. The issue with the Cardinals, again, do they have a clear-cut number one that you would feel confident pitching against Kershaw in a wild card game? I mean, Wainwright's supposed to be that guy, and obviously he is that guy for them. But I mean, going up against a guy like Kershaw, it's very tough to say he has a chance. But I think getting into the wild card spot, I think they will be the second wild card team. I mean, Wainwright, very solid pitcher. Mike Leake has pitched relatively well for them this year. Jaime Garcia's pitched fine. Carlos Martinez, a pretty solid young guy. His issue is always the walks and getting deep into games. But I think those four guys are a decently solid four to get down the stretch with and into that second wild card spot. So again, I think the Nationals still win. I think they're ahead in the East. They win the East. Cubs, by and large, will win the Central. I think the Giants win the division in the West, and I think it's going to be the Dodgers as well as the Cardinals. Miami, the reason why I'm not in love with them is with Jose Fernandez coming off Tommy John. I understand that this is a great opportunity for them to get into the playoffs. I mean, they haven't really had any excitement around this team since they built their new stadium outside of signing Stanton to that record contract. Beyond that, they haven't really had much to get excited about for this team. I mean, I do really like the lineup. I really do. I mean, Yelich, Ozuna, Stanton, Prado, Hechavarria, D. Gordon back, Johnson, Real Muto. I mean, I really do like this lineup. I think it's a very solid lineup. But again, another issue I have for the Marlins is their rotation outside Jose Fernandez. And I think for them to win this, to get into with their wild card, they're really going to have to push Jose a lot. And I don't see them wanting to do that, mortgage their future, his future, over getting in this one time and probably, honestly, losing in the wild card game. I mean, you never know in a one-game wild card game. But I don't know. It's... I think they would have to push Jose a ton, and going up against a team like the Dodgers or the Giants in a one-game playoff, do I give them a chance? Yes, especially if Jose's on the mound, which he would be. But I don't know how much they're going to want to push him, and I think they're going to need to get in. I think D. Gordon, that addition back from his suspension, really does help them a ton. And I do think this lineup's very solid. But outside of him, I mean, Conley's pitched okay, but not anything extraordinary. I mean, he has a 3.70 ERA. I mean, Cashner, that addition from San Diego certainly helps. I do think that trade that they got, they gave up a lot in that trade, but they needed another starter. But Cashner's not going to light the world on fire. Kohler's pitched okay, and Phelps, I mean, it's Phelps, not anything to get overly excited about. A decent rotation, but nothing that's going to compete, I don't think, down the stretch with a team like the Dodgers, the Giants, the Cardinals. So I really don't. I think they fall off. I think they could finish third in front of Pittsburgh and the Mets, but this is going to be really, really close. But I do think your playoff teams in the National League are Washington, the Cubs, Dodgers, Giants, and Cardinals. So, thank you guys for joining me today. I know I ranted a little bit about the Red Sox there at the beginning. That's the team I follow the most, the team I kind of have the most information on. I mean, if you guys are Red Sox fans and would want to see a Red Sox only kind of discussion episode, or if you guys want to see an episode just based on one team in the future, definitely let me know. That's something I'd be definitely open to doing. So thank you for joining me for this MLB prediction show, a little bit shorter of an episode, right around 25 minutes or so. We should be back on Friday, myself and Corey doing a joint episode once again. Spread the channel around, spread the episode around if you guys really did enjoy. Thank you. Leave a like if you enjoyed as well. Comment below on what you'd like to see next. Comment on any suggestions, feedback that you might have. Thank you very much for joining me. This has been Michael or That Guy Expo with Exponential DFS on Exponential Sports Talk, the MLB prediction show. See you guys.